So to remove this lower arm, to get up to that bolt, the triple hex, it looks like I'm going to have to drop this anyway. So spent a lot of time with the magnet for nothing. This is held in just by a couple of 10 mils that I obviously cannot aim for to save my life. I'll just zip these off. These are plastic nuts, so when you do put them back, no crazy torquing or anything. You will strip these very easily. See, plastic nut. All right, so you probably don't have to drop everything. We could just probably just drop this and that'll give me clearance. But I'm gonna go ahead and just drop everything. So there's 2 more bolts that are down there. So we'll zip those off real quickly. And you can use a drill for this. You wanna make it faster, but again, these are just plastic nuts, so it doesn't take a lot to get them off. You do want to replace your fuel filter, your second fuel pump, or your fuel accumulator. This is where they live. Oh, come on. There's one nut. And of course, this one's being a lovely person. There's the other nut. So yes, here is our fuel filter, here is our fuel pump. Nothing's wet, so that's good. Here's our accumulator. So just looking over this, making sure we got no leaks or anything, which is shouldn't. This is brand new. Fuel filter is also new. I changed that not too long ago. And yeah, it looks great. So all is well here. Let's go ahead and zip all this off. Again, it's an 18 millimeter on one side, M12 triple hex. That is the theme of the day. $18mm nut, no washer. There's our arm. Again, immediately assembling parts so we keep them together. Good habits to get into. We have our lower arm here, same story as before. M12 triple hex with the nut on the other side. The bottom side, we do have a washer and obviously our 18mm nut. There we go, old arm. Bushings really don't look that bad at all. We do need to transfer this plastic over to the new arm. The new arm, ironically with no new hardware, which is weird. We do supply the hardware for the other arms from W124. Same arm. To remove this plastic, just simply push it off the sides, dust that out, and get that hair out of there. Let's go ahead and transfer it by clipping it on. Clearly I have the aptitude of, I don't even know. Hands are just so sore. There it is. Come on. All right, there you go. Plastic shield transferred on. Not really sure why they have it. Probably because it's low down. Probably sees a lot of grit to prevent rust or prematurely forming, but there she is. New arm. Let's go get it back in. Got a new arm with the plastic transferred. I'm gonna go ahead and stick it into the top, obviously the wrong way. There we go. Feed the bolt through, just like so. Take the nut and thread it on. Again, we're gonna let this arm just hang because it is easier to keep this arm swung out of the way, because we'll be working on the tie rod right here. As you can see, it clears up a lot of space to get to this bottom nut and then the top eccentric bolt. So now is a pretty good time to discuss right here what the eccentric bolt does, or what an eccentric bolt is. So an eccentric bolt is not a, I guess, eccentric, so it's not just a round, perfectly round bolt. It is wider on one side. The bolt itself is one piece, and this washer here is on the same side, same thing on the other side. So as you can see, there's a lot more meat here than there is on the top. This is a closed region, so what that means is this is fixated. The body doesn't move, obviously. And when you turn the nut here, what will happen is this wide end reaches one of the edges here. It will push and pull. That's very erotic right there. Thumbs up. Push and pull your tire in and out. So this is what adjusts toe, so that eccentric bolt. So you just crack it loose, turn it a bit, turning the head of the bolt here, and it will turn that eccentric adjusting toe. So if you do remove the tie rod and you do know that your alignment was pretty good, though you should get an alignment every time you change bushings or anything in the suspension, try to put it back to where it was, or as close as possible. I will be realigning the car front and back, so that's just a to-do item for me to do later. It is a 16mm nut. I'm just gonna grab it and turn. There we go. Cracked loose. We do get new hardware, so we do not need to reuse the old hardware, thankfully. One thing I will say, you can see this is not coming out. We're gonna have to hammer it a bit to get it out, or if you have a separator, you would stick it in here and push this apart. So I actually leave the nut on top, because when hammering this, you do not want to mushroom the top of the nut and then have it potentially not be able to come out, which in an instance you'd have to cut it and remove it this way, but we don't want to do that. So leave the nut on, especially if you have new hardware. You might damage the nut, the nut comes off and the shaft will spin out. If you do need to reuse this, you're probably best off having a separator, because you don't want to risk damaging the tie rod. So that being said, let's go ahead and move to our 18mm up here. We're gonna see if I can crack this loose. Oh geez. Oh, somebody really torqued that one. So my camera died. So this is actually an 18mm nut, and there is a washer on this side. On the adjacent side, it is still the M12 triple square. I don't know why I thought there was a nut on that side. So the washer obviously is your eccentric, which does not want to come out. Come on, buddy. Here's that eccentric washer. You can see it has a tab right there that locks it so it doesn't spin around. And you just push it out. The bolt itself is also eccentric and has welded on as one piece. So you can see, so this washer cannot slip around. And there she is. There's a tie rod. So like I mentioned before, if you have a spreader or separator, you would stick it in and do that. But I do not, so the violence commences. Or will commence. What I like to do is tap the knuckle. Sometimes that gets it loose. If that doesn't work, we get more violent, tap the tie rod. If that doesn't work, we tap the screw. All right, so we got some more parts that came in the mail today. As you can see, these are two new lower control arms. These are OEM Mercedes. There's the part number if you need, 202 350 0206. Obviously, new bushings pressed in. This was not necessary, so if you are doing a rear end rebuild and you're not a complete doofus like I am, I had to get control arms because, yeah. So, this is obviously not factory. This obviously didn't crack, but if you can see, those with a keen eye, you can kind of see this is bigger than that, huh? just a dumb moment. I don't really have a good explanation for this other than I just had a mind lapse. But essentially what I did is I didn't look at the diameter of the socket that I was using to push the old bushing out, and pretty much the diameter was bigger than the original circle, and I ended up widening the hole, then getting the socket stuck in there, and then proceeding having to cut the control arm to get the socket out. And yeah, real dumb maneuver on my part. So I don't think if you're doing this, this isn't something that, you don't need lower control arms unless you've had an accident or something or whatever. But anyway, let's say you couldn't get control arms and you're stuck with, a damaged control arm because you're a doofus. Now, what you can do is, you can see this is welded on. So this little cuff here that the bushing sits into, this could be cut out and you could salvage the rest of the arm, and then you could take a piece of metal and wrap it around the bushing, kind of get a fit and just make a new cuff, or get a new cuff, or find something like a pipe or something that's this thickness. You can just weld it in and then you could have your bushing fit in again. What is critical though is that this diameter is perfect fit for that bushing. So remember, these bushings sit in by tight fit. So the whole thing that's holding the bushing in is really just the bushing itself being pressed into the metal, and that friction is holding it. So just keep that in mind when you do this. Don't be a doofus like me, but hey, new control arms, I guess, and they do look pretty. They are MB OEM, so they're like 80 something bucks a pop, which is why I didn't really bother fixing this one. It wasn't that expensive. I didn't really need the other side, but I went ahead and just got it because I don't know why. I just figured that I'd probably, knowing my luck, I would buy one and mess up the other side and then be stuck another week waiting for parts. So I went ahead and just got both, but let's go ahead and get those control arms in. So how I was talking about how these might be unobtainium. Well, I'm going to go put this control arm on, and then I realized that the SLS strut isn't really exactly fitting in how it's supposed to, so I'm like, what is going on? Take it off and I compare it with this one, right? And you can see, or maybe you can't, but look closely here and see what you can see. This hole is smaller than this one. You see how there's only 2 holes here? There are 3 holes here. The control arms fundamentally are the same. The spring perch, the size, the width is the same. However, actually, I don't even know. Looking at this, my eyes might be deceiving me, but this hole might be bigger than this one. But the spring fits fine, so I don't think that's the case. Yeah, this sucks because I'm going to have to do what I was talking about. Since this is gone, we're going to have to press this bushing out, cut this, and then cut this cuff, and I'm just going to have to weld this cuff onto here. That's the only solution that I can come up with. So I'm going to have to take a brand new control arm, mangle it to repair my old control arm, and then I have another control arm that's brand new that can't fit on the car. So I don't even know what I'm going to do with that one. I might have to just sell it or something. Yeah, what a ding dong I am, huh? Okay, so change of plans. I'm actually not going to cut at the cuff here, only because I have the tool to press the bearing out. That's not the issue. It's just for me to cut around that cuff perfectly without damaging the cuff, or what I'm worried is if I weld this, the weld might penetrate through and then the bushing won't be able to go in anymore. So looking at these, it's about 2 inches to this line right here on both arms. So if we put that there, it's a little over, so 2 inches and some change. So they're identical here, thankfully. The structure is exactly the same. So what I'm going to do is, because this is identical between the two, is I'm going to cut right against this, straight down, and then cut right against this, straight down, and then transfer this arm to there. Now the trick here, and what's going to suck, is 1, the cut has to be perfect. 2, when welding it, it can't be welded at an angle, it can't be crooked, it can't be longer, it can't be shorter, because if it's longer or shorter, guess what? That bolt is going to go in, that bushing is not going to go in. So that part's going to suck. So we're going to have to be really precise with cutting this. And I really should have noticed this. I don't know why I didn't think. The fitment online said it fits, so I was like, okay, didn't think that much about it. But I should have gone to Mercedes and looked at the part number and compared. You can even see these ears are a bit different. And honestly, like this could have changed through the years. That wouldn't be necessarily a giveaway. Or a straightaway giveaway. It kind of sucks, but I do have 2 control arms, so I guess the one plus side is if I mangle one, I can try mangling it again to make it work. It's just getting this cut perfectly straight is going to be the most difficult part. Now, the other thing you could do is you could probably cut at the spring perch and transfer this over. That's a lot of cutting. It's going to be hard to weld in here. You could weld that cuff, like I said, but I'm worried is this weld. This is a machined weld. This is not done by a human. Is that weld would go through. They might even weld it and clean the hole afterwards. I don't know. Because if you think about it, if your weld penetrates into that hole, it's going to obstruct the bushing from going in. And obviously, you'd have to press the bushing out if you wanted to weld this, because it would just melt the bushing. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and cut straight down. and I guess just transfer it over and weld it, and let's hope that works. So a couple of things I'm noticing right off the bat. These ears are not exactly the same, which is fine. This could have widened, it's whatever. We're welding this anyway, I'm not worried about that. The thing is, the temptation I think would be to just weld it flush, and look, it's perfect, right? But you gotta remember the thickness of the saw is about the material that we ended up losing. So it's actually something like this is where the perfect length would be. Now, what we could have done, and we should have done, is measure this perfect distance to here. What I'm actually going to end up doing is cleaning both pieces. I'm going to bolt this up on the car, bolt this on the other side. I'm going to bring the two pieces together so that the bolts are in position, and then I'm just going to tack weld it on both sides, then remove the entire control arm. That way, I don't have any issues of worrying, you know, hey, this might be here, this might be here, this might, like, you know, you don't have any problems there. So just tack weld it a bunch around, take the whole control arm out, and then I'm going to weld a solid bead all the way around, and then we should be good to go. And then this control arm is back in business. That one, I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I guess scrap metal. As you can see here, we got it mocked up all the way around. The bolt is on the bottom there. The nut should be on this side, but it doesn't matter for the alignment. It's okay. We've got the bolt on top. Now I'm just going to tack this a couple of times, remove it, and then weld it solid, and then that's it. It'll be like this never happened. So I'm pretty happy with the cut. As you can see, that's why I said there's going to be a bit of a space between, about the size of the blade is what we expected. That space is okay too, because when you weld, the weld will expand and then contract. As it cools, it shrinks down. So having a bit of a gap between is perfectly okay, and it's actually good. So yeah, I'm gonna go tack this on, you know, being careful because we are under I think full fuel tank. This is not fuel, by the way. This is just some penetrating oil and stuff, but yeah, so gotta be careful. Remove the battery in the car if you ever do weld in the car. I highly recommend that you don't weld in the car, just because it's dangerous. There's fuel and all types of other stuff that can cause chaos, but we'll be okay, I think. We'll find out. Either that or I'm gonna burn the whole garage down today. But yeah, the other thing is this one is slightly skinnier than this, so this is a bit wider than that piece, which is what we saw earlier anyway. You could do two things here. You could expand this by putting something in between and kind of just opening it up to match this, but it's really not that big of a difference, and it's going to get welded anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. Structurally, it's not going to be compromised or anything, so it's good. So I'll tack weld it, we'll get it off the car and weld it entirely, put a nice bead on it, and then we'll be good to go. Okay, so here we go. Welded that end piece on, so you can see it's got pretty good penetration too. So that's all there is to it. It's pretty hot right now. We got lucky, didn't melt the bushing. It got hot, but it didn't get too hot to where it would compromise the bushing. So I'm happy with that. Again, I have more bushing, so I can replace it. if needed. But yeah, that's it. So it's pretty hot right now. I gotta spray this down, get it ready, and paint it, because this is now a rust haven. Anywhere you weld, you're gonna be, you know, it's gonna draw rust. So definitely want to paint it as soon as you can. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up, prep it for paint, paint it, let it dry, and then we'll get mounted. Here it is post paint. Looks like it never happened, other than the weld. Paint also matches the factory arm pretty well. It's the flat black from Eastwood. So yeah, looks good. Okay, so it's a new day. We left off taking off this tie rod. What's happening now is the nuts on the back, I hammered it out to get it off the spindle, and it's twisting, and then the nut that's inside the hex nut is stripped from, I don't know what from. So I'm just gonna grab this with some grips and then twist that nut off on there. It's hand tight, so it should come right off. And then we'll pop this one out, put the new one in. It should be good to go. Like, there we are. This tie rod is trash. Looks like the bushing had some separation in it. Not too bad though. Nothing worthy of replacing, but we've already kind of done a number on it. So here's our new one. Pop the protective cover off. You can see there's no play in that, which is what we want. Brand new locking nut. We're gonna just insert that guy. Now with new ones, there is a hex key in there. So inside that thread, and we'll take the old one for example. So you can see this hex key is stripped, but there's a hex key in here. And because when you're turning this nut, you want to stop this shaft from turning, so you have to counter hold it. If you don't put that there and you turn the nut, the whole thing just twists like this, and you'll never tighten it. So when the hex key's in there, this is holding this way, the nut's going this way, and that's how you tighten it. So, okay, as you see, I hold the hex key in there. So we're gonna torque this. I believe the torque spec, don't hold me on this because the page is in front of me, is 35 Newton meters, or 45, one of those two. In a second, this one, we can torque even when the knuckle is at this angle. Put in our eccentric bolt. Trying to get some good lighting for the footage. And I'm blinding myself in the process. That is wonderful. Come on. Come on. Please. There we are. This one we're just gonna snug up. Again, this one does not get torqued finally now. Oh Lord. I have our 18 mil on one side and our triple square on the other, which I am absolutely making a hash of. Trying to grip it. I think I got it. Okay, so that's just snug. It's not nearly where it needs to be torque-wise. That's because we don't want it super loose while we're working on the rest of the stuff. All right, I think it's time we moved on. Once the bolt's up in there, we tighten this line, snug it up, and if there's fluid in here, it can't escape.